The Texas Chain Saw Massacre has really started running into a lot of big issues lately, and if you've played the game recently, you probably know exactly what I'm referring to, which is just how long it takes for players to actually get into a match. Often players, even low-level players, can sit in lobbies for up to 10 to 20 minutes just for one match, and that match can literally be as short as 1 minute. And to be clear, this is mostly not a matchmaking issue. TCM still has a big player base, due in large part to Xbox Game Pass placing it as the top 4th played game on the service. Now that said, you might assume or believe that the problem lies with the players for dodging lobbies, but in reality, players are dodging lobbies for a number of very legitimate reasons. The community is not at fault for this. So in order to fix it, the devs need to address some issues with why players are dodging so many lobbies. The good news here is that the reasons why players are dodging lobbies really isn't all that complicated. So in this video, I'm going to go through all the issues that the developers need to address to stop lobby dodging. Well, also, and this is equally important, I'm going to be addressing some really bad short-sighted ideas that I've seen suggested in the community to fix lobby dodging that would backfire massively. Alright. The first major issue is that players, family, or victim usually want to play a specific character, and the devs massively encourage this with how they set up the game's leveling system. The leveling system in TCM currently discourages players from playing any character that they're not actively grinding. Let's say I'm a cook main and my cook is level 10. When I play Cook, I'm gaining XP on my Cook perks, XP on my ability tree, and I'm able to compete with level 10 victims on the other team. Now if that Cook joins a lobby and his character is already taken, he has no incentive to play another character unless he's leveled them up to level 10. Why would he play Leatherface if he's not gaining XP on any perks? More than that, there's only 5 killers and 5 victims in the game, so it's very possible that players will only enjoy playing a single character, and they shouldn't be stressed out or punished for that. The leveling system also punishes players for respeccing their characters because the best builds usually require specific random perk rolls that can take multiple rerolls just to get, which punishes players for trying to experiment with new characters. So how do we address this? Well, I'll explain exactly what steps I would take to erase this problem at every level. First, let players pre-select the character they want to play as before searching. This is already going to cut lobby dodging down by 50%, and even if it slightly slows matchmaking time down, it will be worth it for the higher quality lobbies. Step 2, add an option in this pre-select page where players can get 15% bonus experience if they choose to play any character, because that would incentivize players to open queue, which speeds up matchmaking and helps massively with filling up active lobbies. Another character issue that needs addressing is Leatherface. He's the only mandatory character in the game, which gives off the impression that nobody wants to play as him, which isn't necessarily true. Still though, the devs should consider adding a little bit of quality of life to make Leatherface more enjoyable to play and less tedious. A few things to consider. Make it to where his chainsaw doesn't overheat during the grandpa woke up cutscene. Maybe get rid of that cutscene altogether. I think it's a little bit annoying, but that's another subject. Let him saw barricades twice as fast. When he's at full rev, let him barge closed doors so he doesn't have to awkwardly stop revving to open the door. Remove the silly animation after his saw starts. It completely ruins any chance for stealth playstyles, which is something I know the devs wanted to be in the game. And most importantly, honestly, let players lower the volume of the chainsaw. I know the devs put a lot of effort into it, but it's way too loud for a lot of the player base, and because of the way Leatherface is balanced, he needs to spend pretty much the entire game in full chainsaw rev, which is insanely annoying after a while. Moving on to players dodging because of other player levels in the lobby. Maybe the other team has level 99s on it, or their team has a level 2 on it, so they dodge. It's a problem, and the solution is to just hide player levels. They do not serve any important purpose gameplay-wise and cause a lot of lobby dodging because of the ill-conceived notion that high-level players play significantly better, which will be less and less true the longer the game is out. The only levels that are relevant to the match are character levels, which go from 1 to 10. Player levels serve no purpose and 100% should be hidden, at least until the post-game screen. Another suggestion I've seen in the community is to hide pre-mains. Those are the little emblems here that show you who is matched up together in a group. I completely disagree with this. Pre-made should always be shown. It's really important that the players have that information in some form. Again, a fair half measure could be hiding that information until the post-game screen, but please do not remove it entirely because that will lead to heavy amounts of toxicity, speculation, and ultimately frustration. The next big problem isn't actually a problem yet at all, and that has to do with DLC characters. We know there are 2 new characters coming to the game soon, one family member and one victim costing $10 each. Now, the obvious issue here is that players who purchase these characters are going to want to play them. So how do the devs fix this? Well, if you take my suggestion from before and add the option for players to pre-select their character, that already solves the lobby dodging aspect of it that would otherwise make the game unplayable. However, it doesn't necessarily solve the slow matchmaking times that will be a problem when the new characters launch. Fortunately, TCM isn't the first game that has had to deal with this. Every new character-based game runs into issues around a DLC launch. Slower matchmaking times are impossible to avoid during a launch window, but they do eventually go back to normal. That said, if you look at all these games, the one that's most comparable in terms of lobby setup and price is actually Rainbow Six Siege. So what Rainbow Six Siege did to mitigate slower matchmaking was they allowed players who purchased the new characters with real money to play them a week early. This effectively created 2 separate launch windows that allowed players more of a chance to actually play the new characters. Those who purchased with real money and those who grinded to unlock the new characters in game. The problem with the Texas Chain Saw Massacre is the devs currently have no plans that allow characters to be earned in game, which is an inevitable mistake. Even if the devs put their foot down and say, no, we're committed to this pricing, it will blow back on them down the line, and hopefully by then it's not too late. I say this confidently because every other developer in the games as a service industry has been down this road before, and they all eventually understood that players have to be able to unlock new characters via in-game grinding. Usually settling on something like 2 to 3 days of playtime earns you a new character for free. There are some exceptions with licensed characters, but so far it looks like TCM is creating entirely original characters, and this is for the devs specifically. The same logic is being used here as for why you are releasing the new map for free. You have to keep the player base afloat at all reasonable costs. Alrighty, back to lobby dodging. We need to discuss legitimate balance issues that are making the problem worse. Now, you might disagree with what I'm about to say about balance, but if you look at the bigger picture, which is that lobby dodging is ruining the game, these balance issues have to be addressed. Let's start with a badly balanced map and how it causes a lot of lobby dodging on the family side. Now, I've seen a few attempts at saying Slaughterhouse is as bad for family as Family House is for victims. But this is not necessarily true, so don't let anybody conflate these maps equally. Slaughterhouse is so poorly balanced that a lot of family players are just never going to entertain it with their time because the pressure tank spawns in the basement and there's 3 easily accessible valve wheel spawns, which is just incredibly unfair. Add to that, it's the biggest map in the game, so it's also the most difficult to defend the exit gates on and maneuver as family, especially in solo queue. So to start, the devs need to get the pressure tank out of the basement and reduce the valve wheel spawns to 2. Do that and we'll see how it goes. There are possibly other issues on Slaughterhouse 2, but let's just start small and work our way up from there. Slaughterhouse betrays the balancing of the other 2 maps in a very strange way, and as much as I dislike talking about balance issues in TCM because it's sort of cringe, I did mention in my previous video that we can't look at everything in the game with rose-tinted glasses just because we love the game. Big problems like this that make the game unplayable need to be addressed. Even if you disagree with the argument, you cannot disagree with the result, which is that Slaughterhouse encourages lobby dodging. On that note, I have heard a terrible idea that maps should be hidden so that players do not know what map it is until the game actually starts. Not only would this not work because players would just DC if they got a map they refuse to play on, but it takes the strategy out of the game, especially in the future when there's more characters to choose from. A character might be really strong on one map and completely worthless on another, and again, we don't want players to DC from a match. That's way worse than dodging a lobby. Speaking of DCs, another short-sighted idea is adding DC penalties to the game. That's just the wrong direction to go with TCM. It's important to understand the game has the responsibility of encouraging and incentivizing players to not DC. XP. It's actually easy to do. Just implement rewards for not DCing. It's really that simple. Right now, players keep all of their earned XP if they DC from a match, which actually incentivizes DCing massively. So simple solution, if you stay in a match until the end, you get 500 bonus experience. For family, that means until all victims are either dead or have escaped, and for victims, that means once you're dead or have escaped. Victims should not be forced to spectate matches for their XP reward. However, remove the feature for keeping all currently earned XP when DCing, as that's rewarding players for leaving early, which is insane and sometimes even causes lobbies to crash. The last problem here is again family sided, which shouldn't be that hard to believe seeing as family players are the ones dodging the majority of the time. Earlier we touched on making Leatherface more enjoyable to play, but now we need to talk about Sissy. She's by far the weakest family member because everything she can do can be done better by another family member, and because of that people dodge lobbies when they have a Sissy on their team. The only thing that ever made Sissy decent was her bugged hits, and now that's been patched out of the game. So some things need to be considered on how to make her as useful as the other family members and stand on her own. So here are my suggestions. Increase her base movement speed to be at least the same as the Hitchhiker. It makes no sense that she's slower than Hitchhiker when he has arguably the best power on the family role. Her recharge stations to create more poison should be able to be used at least 3 times each. Right now they can usually only be used once, which is just terrible. Victims who use items she's poisoned should be highlighted for at least her, if not the entire team. Her base attributes make it very difficult to create a decent build with her that isn't focused on feeding Grandpa, which again, Cook does nearly just as well, while also bringing a ton of additional utility to the team. Her poison in general is kind of lackluster. It's not really threatening in any serious way, so it should cause bleed damage base kit like her tier 3 level up. And lastly, her skill tree layout is very limiting compared to the other family members. No perks really synergize well, leading to awkward or boring generic builds. I've heard similar complaints with Johnny, but the community is just wrong here. He's more than fine. I'm a day 1 Johnny main, and people are definitely still sleeping on the strength of this character. Alright, so there you have a detailed explanation on how to fix the problems with the lobby dodging, and it's important to take this seriously because even the biggest TCM lover will not want to play this game if they are spending the majority of their time sitting in a lobby. Again, the main point of this video I want you to walk away with is that even if you disagree with my points, you cannot ignore the fact that lobby dodging is ruining the game and is only going to get worse as time goes on if nothing is done to address it. Now with that, of course, let me know anything else you would change to stop lobby dodging, or if you disagree with any of my points. And as always, thanks for watching and have a good one.